On the basalt plateau of the Giara, a shepherd swings open a drystone gate and lets his flock spill past the foot of a 3,000-year-old tower that no one ever built a door for. "60 kilometers south, in a stone kitchen in Seulo, a man in his 100th year pours red wine into 2 small tumblers and sets one down without being asked. On the Cagliari quay at 8 o'clock, the ferry to the mainland loads a slow line of cars, most of them driven by people under 30. Three moments, one island, and between them, the whole of its bargain. Sardinia sits in the middle of the Mediterranean, and it has spent 3,000 years learning how to be left alone. Lately, it is learning the harder version, how to be simply left. 7,000 stone towers stand across it, raised by builders who vanished without a single name. Its villages keep men alive to 100, while the young sail off by the ferry load. It once had to be poisoned, free of its marshes, just to survive. Its story runs through towers, shepherds, marshes, harbors, and the stubborn arithmetic of staying. At first light, the ground at Barumini seems to organize itself out of shadow. A ring inside a ring inside a ring. Drystone courses of dark basalt, fitted so closely that no mortar was ever needed and none was ever used. Gravity alone holds the tower together, course pressing on course, as it has since roughly 1,500 years before Christ. Only after the eye has followed the joints does the scale arrive. The central keep at Sunaraxi rose first, and later builders wrapped it in 4 corner towers and a village of round huts, until the whole made a fortress older than Rome. It lay under a grassed-over mound for millennia, until a landslip in the winter rains opened it, and the archaeologist Giovanni Liliu, born in the village in 1914, spent the better part of a decade digging it back into daylight through the 1950s. The man who would call his vanished ancestors a constant of resistance, and whose tower would carry Sardinia's name onto the roll of the world's protected places. And it is not rare. 40 kilometers east, on the tableland above Oroli, the same idea stands in red. Nuraghe Arubiu takes its name from the rust-colored lichen that has crept across its basalt for 3,000 years, and the Sardinians call it the Red Giant. 5 towers set around a central keep in a deliberate pentagon, a plan and not an accident, ringed by defensive walls and once perhaps 25 to 30 meters tall. as high as an 8-story house, raised without machines, without mortar, without a single written word to record who ordered the work or why. West again, on the wind-swept plateau of Abasanta, Nuraghe Losa keeps its central chamber whole. Its ceiling a false dome of stone rings, closing inward course by course, until one capstone holds the weight of the sky. Losa is one of the towers the Sardinians call Nuraghe, and some 7,000 of them still stand across the island, one for every few square kilometers of rock and pasture. The number turns the marvel into a habit, and the habit is not only ruin. At midday, a shepherd still ducks through a low doorway into the cool, round chamber of a tower much like this one, whistles his flock into the shade behind him, and sits where a Bronze Age family once kept its fire. A heel of bread balanced on his knee, the heat of the plateau shut out by walls 4 meters thick. The same room, the same shelter, 3,000 years apart. The builders were not only masons who stacked stone against the heat, they watched the sky and cut stone to meet it. Near Pauli Latino, at the sacred well of Santa Cristina, a trapezoidal staircase descends in exact, narrowing steps into the earth toward a circular well of black water. Every course shaped around the 11th century before Christ. The stairway and the round opening cut into the roof are aligned so precisely that once in a generation, when the moon swings to the far limit of its long 18-year standstill, its light falls straight down the shaft and settles on the surface of the water. Astronomy performed in dry stone by people who left behind no equation, no calendar, and no name for what they plainly knew. On the plain that later Sardinians came to call the Valley of the Nuraghe, near Torralba, the tallest of the survivors throws its shadow across the fields at dusk. Santu Antina still rises some 17 meters through 3 stories of corbelled chambers, and the people who settled the valley long after its builders were gone gave it the only name it carries, the King's House. Though no one has ever known the king, or the kingdom, or the tongue in which he might once have been obeyed. The builders left no word for themselves, not for their kings, not even for their gods. But the people who came after them learned the one thing the towers were really teaching: how to stay. The villages of Ogliastra sit grey against green, schist walls, the colour of slate, folded into vertical ridges that drop away toward the Tyrrhenian, and the ground between them gives little. Thin soil over rock, slopes too steep to plough with ease, offering for most of its history only what a goat could bring down or a garden could be coaxed to yield. It looks like hardship, and for centuries it was. And then, in 2004, the demographer Michel Poulain and the physician Gianni Pes drew a blue circle on a map around this exact country and handed the world the phrase "Blue Zone," one of only 5 such places on Earth, marked because the men here reach 100 at a rate found almost nowhere else. Nearly 1 old man for every old woman, where elsewhere the ratio runs closer to 1 in 5. The densest point inside that circle is Seulo, a village a person could cross on foot in 10 minutes, a scatter of stone houses on a narrow lane, where an old man sits on a low chair in a doorway with the morning sun on the wall behind him. For its handful of inhabitants, it has held one of the highest concentrations of 100-year-olds ever counted anywhere, a number that belongs to a city, recorded in a place that barely fills a line of the census. The diet that carried those years was never abundance. Goat's milk and barley, vegetables from the garden wall, meat only rarely, and a small measure of red wine taken daily, the same at 90 as at 40. The reason the years accumulate here becomes visible from above Baunai, where the white limestone plateau breaks off and drops to the sea, and the goats work a face so near to vertical that tending them is cardiovascular labor rather than a chore. This is the thesis of the place made literal. The kitchens sit down in the village, and the flocks graze the heights above them, so that every day of a working life bends uphill. Nobody chose the arrangement for its benefits. The ground simply left no flatter option, and the body paid the price each morning. And the price, over 90 years, turned out to be the reward. So each morning, a single figure sets out behind a moving line of sheep, up a slope of grass and broken rock, still hazed with the night's cool. Several kilometers of climb that an 80-year-old walks without remark, having walked it for 70 years before this one. It is the exercise no one calls exercise, kept up not for the heart, but for the animals, though the heart is what quietly profits. Poulain and Pes could weigh the barley and measure the wine and count the years, but the shepherds never troubled to argue the point with them. They only turned at the top and walked back up. And when the light goes and the flock is folded, the day comes down off the hill and into a low stone kitchen in Seulo, where a man who has been 99 since March takes an unlabeled bottle from the shelf and pours dark Cannonau into a pair of squat glasses. It is the island's deep Grenache, thick with the compounds the studies chase, though here it is still only the daily measure, no more ceremonial than bread. He sets the second glass on the worn pine table toward the chair opposite, a courtesy older than whoever happens to be sitting there, offered whether the guest is expected or a stranger who arrived that hour. Instead of a toast, he lifts his own glass a finger's width from the wood and drinks. The glass is empty. Outside, the lane goes on climbing past the last roof, and somewhere above it, faint and moving higher, come the bells of the flock the whole day was really built around. The bells go on climbing until the last roof of Seulo drops away beneath them. Above stands the Gennargentu, the highest ground on the island. a massif of schist and thin grass. Its summit, Punta la Marmora, reaches 1,834 meters above a sea it can scarcely be said to belong to. This is the empty high country of the interior. The Romans named it Barbaria for the people they never managed to hold, and the Sardinians call it Barbagia still. Through the summer, it belongs almost wholly to the flocks and the men who walk up behind them. Higher than any other village stands Foni, close to 1,000 meters up, where the last houses open straight onto pasture. The surfaced road gives out here. The walking begins. Below it, the valleys hold villages whose names change every few kilometers, and whose dialects change with them. For centuries, the pattern was simple and unforgiving. A shepherd left the village in late spring and took his flock up into the mountains for weeks together, sometimes a month or more, sleeping in a stone hut, milking morning and evening, and seeing no one for days at a time. The milk became cheese, because cheese travels better than milk, and the bread that went up with him had to travel best of all. No man can carry a month of fresh loaves into the heights, where bread turns to mold within days. So the women of the interior baked a bread that would refuse to spoil, and built a small, exact cuisine around the weeks a man spent away. In a low kitchen, the dough of durum wheat is rolled out thin, slid into the oven until it swells into a hollow dome, lifted and split with a knife into 2 discs, each no thicker than paper, then returned to the heat to toast a second time. That second baking, carasare in the old speech, gives pane carasau its name. At a floured table, a woman lays each finished sheet onto the growing stack the way her mother taught her, the discs crackling like dry leaves as they settle, 30 centimeters across and almost without weight. A fortnight of a man's suppers built one thin round at a time. Kept dry, it holds for months without turning. Softened later with a little water, brushed with oil and salt, and warmed again, it becomes a hot supper in itself. And broken dry over a bowl of broth, it becomes another. It was engineered, long before the word existed, for a life lived a long way from any oven. What those solitary months produce comes down once a week to Nuoro, the old town on the flank of Monte Ortobene that gave Italy its first woman Nobel laureate, Grazia Deledda, awarded the prize for literature in 1926 for novels grown directly out of these shepherds' lives. On market morning, the stalls crowd the street with pale rounds of carasau, wheels of hard sheep's cheese, dark bitter honey, and horn-handled knives from the forges of nearby Patada, and farmers who spent the week apart on separate heights now stand shoulder to shoulder over the tables. Prices are argued in low voices. A wheel of cheese is turned over and thumbed for firmness. Some of the sellers drove down the same roads their grandfathers walked with laden mules, the cheese stacked now in the back of a van, the errand otherwise unchanged. The high ground gave hard bread, long years, and a safety the lowlands never knew.
For down below the mountains, where the rivers slowed and the water lay still and warm across the whole length of the summer, the oldest enemy on the island was waiting. For 5,000 years it turned the best and flattest land in Sardinia into the most dangerous ground a family could choose to live on.
Down from the mountains, the land finally flattens, and the Campidano opens south and west in a long, fertile plain, the granary of the island, its rivers slowing as they near the coast into the reed lagoons of Oristano and the wide, shallow ponds of Molentagas outside Cagliari, water that holds warm and motionless through the length of the summer. It is the best farmland in Sardinia, and for 5,000 years it was the deadliest, because still warm water is where the Anopheles labranchii mosquito breeds, and in its bite lived the fever the Sardinians called intemperie, malaria, which owned these lowlands so completely that whole villages climbed uphill each summer and left the good ground to the insects. It is the reason an island ringed entirely by sea built its towns inland and lived with its back to the water. Flat country that fed the island and killed it in the same season. A coast that was a threat rather than a view. The cost was counted one household at a time. In a farmhouse on the plain, a child lies shaking under blankets in the heat of August, the fever climbing and breaking and climbing again on its 3-day cycle, while a mother measures out bitter quinine powder by the spoonful, the only defense anyone had, and never enough. In the worst districts, people slept on upper floors and kept the animals stabled below, hoping the beasts would draw the mosquitoes down and away from the beds, a folk remedy against a cause no one yet understood. Harvest fell in the same weeks the fever peaked, so the sickness took the workers exactly when the fields most needed them, and the parish priests kept registers thick with the names of the summer dead, year after year, generation after generation, as though it was simply the rent owed on fertile ground. By the middle of the 20th century, the numbers were still enormous. In 1946, with the island coming hungry and broken out of the war, Sardinia recorded more than 75,000 cases of malaria in a single year. That autumn, a campaign began with no precedent anywhere on Earth for its scale. The Sardinian Project, funded largely by the Rockefeller Foundation and run by a regional body known as ERLAS, its field operations directed by the American engineer John Logan, who set out not merely to treat the sick, but to erase the mosquito from an entire island. For 5 years, teams walked the whole of Sardinia. At its height, ERLAS employed some 30,000 people who sprayed some 267 tons of DDT, the active agent, into houses, byres, wells, ditches, and every standing pool they could reach, drained the marshes, straightened the streams, and came back again and again to the same doorways with canisters on their backs. children followed the spray men from door to door through the settling white haze, too young to understand the fever they were being spared. And the smell of it hung in kitchens and cowsheds for weeks, sweet and oily. And no one feared it. It was a brutal, total chemical decade. And it worked in a way almost nothing in public health had worked before. In 1951, 5 years after the 75,000, the island recorded 9 cases of malaria. Nine. The mosquito itself was never quite eradicated and lives in the marshes still, but the disease it carried was gone, and with it, the reason to fear the low ground. What the campaign left behind was double-edged. An island suddenly free of a 5,000-year illness, and a landscape soaked in a chemical the world would spend the following decades learning to regret. The rescue and the poison arrived in the same decade, and so the coast that Sardinians had shunned for 50 centuries stood open at last. The warm marshes harmless, the long shoreline empty of everything but sand, and waiting for a use no one on the island had ever been able to make of it. Within a generation, others would come to make it for them.
Each summer, the north of the island fills again. At Olbia, the ferries come in heavy from Genoa and Livorno and Civitavecchia. And for a few weeks, the coast road runs thick with returning cars, while the villages inland hold their festivals to full squares. Then September comes, and the same ferries carry the young back the other way, to universities in Rome and Pisa, to work in Milan and Turin, and further still, and the squares thin out again. Sardinia holds roughly 1.6 million people across an island the size of a small country, and the interior loses them fastest, its median age climbing year on year as the school registers shorten and the ferry timetables do not. Some places have already emptied for good. Above the Ogliastra valleys stands Gairo Vecchio, a village of a few hundred souls, abandoned after the floods of the 1950s tore at its foundations, its people carried down to newer ground until the last of them were gone by the early 1960s. Its streets stand open to the weather now. Stone houses with the sky where their roofs were, door frames opening onto rooms that hold only light and the slow work of grass between the flags. No one locked the doors. They simply left in a single decade, and the village stayed exactly where it was, emptied, the way the towers were emptied 3,000 years before it. On the far west coast, the same silence takes an industrial shape at Argentiera, where miners cut silver from the cliffs for more than 2,000 years, from Roman hands to modern machines, until the seams gave out and the last shift climbed the ladder for good around 1963. The timber headframes still stand over the flooded shafts, graying against the sea, and the workers' houses look out on a bay that no longer has any reason to be worked. It is a place built entirely for a purpose, outliving the purpose, and refusing all the same to fall down. 200 kilometers south, on the Cagliari quay, the leaving has a face and a time. At 8 o'clock, a line of cars idles toward the mouth of the mainland ferry. Most of them driven by people under 30. A grandmother's cooking packed in a cool box on the back seat. The boot heavy, with everything a single room in a northern city will require. The parents stand at the rail above the ramp and do not wave until the cars are already gone from sight. And then they turn back toward an island that has been learning this particular grief for a very long time. It is a scene the harbor has staged each September for generations and will stage again. And yet the island answers the leaving in its own stubborn grammar. In Mamoyada, in the cold heart of winter, in a back room off a narrow street, a man lifts a mask of blackened wild pear wood down from its hook and fits it over his face, then bends forward while another loads 30 kilos of iron cowbells onto his back and buckles the leather straps across his chest, the bells hanging heavy and, for now, completely silent. He is a Mamuthones, one of a line of them, and when he steps into the street with 11 others, they move together in a slow, deliberate stamp that throws every bell into sound at once, a rhythm that has walked this village door to door each winter for longer than anyone can date. The men under the masks are farmers and masons, a school teacher, a son home from the mainland for the week. The procession turns the corner and the bells go on after it, out of sight, then fade. By morning, the masks are back on their hooks and the ferry timetable is unchanged. But the slow emptying of the squares has met, one more winter, the older arithmetic that refuses to let the island go.
A year has turned, and the winter room in Mamoyada is quiet again. The bells that shook the streets are resting on the floor, the leather straps coiled, the black pear wood masks hanging from their hooks with the blank patience of tools that know their season will come back. On the Giara plateau, evening settles around the drystone gate where the flock passed in the morning, and the tower without a door takes the first cold of night into its walls. At Olbia, another ferrylight moves out over the water. On the Torralba plain, the king's house lays its shadow across fields whose king is gone beyond memory. The island keeps count in objects that wait longer than people do: masks, bells, stones. The towers have kept their silence for 3,000 years. "7,000 of them, and not one builder's name.